You're there with me. We're in sync. This is why people like these interviews so much.
How we doing, everybody? This is Case from Q101. We are back in the Q101 Lounge. We are back with AEW founder, CEO Tony Khan. It is an absolute pleasure to have you for the second time during this 3-week Chicago residency. Tony, how are you?
I'm very well, Case. It's great to be here with you. You're known for doing these great interviews about pro wrestling, and I really enjoy doing these interviews with you, so I thought I would come back with Wednesday Night Dynamite here in Chicago tonight, 7 p.m. Central Time. If you can't join us at the Aragon Ballroom because tickets are very limited, you could watch the show tonight on TBS at 7 o'clock, or you can stream it on HBO Max.
You can. I do love, just to quickly peek behind the curtain, getting an email from somebody on the AEW staff going, would it be okay if Tony comes by again? Do you think you could make time for him? Tony, more than happy to have you come by. I'm especially happy today because you have a big announcement about AEW in Chicago.
I do. We've had such a great run of AEW TV these past few weeks. I'm very excited for tonight's show, tonight's Dynamite, and tomorrow we have a Thursday Collision. So since tonight and tomorrow, we're back-to-back nights of AEW TV, and we've had such a great run of shows with AEW here in Chicago, and we've had so many great pay-per-view shows here over the years. I thought it would be great for the first time ever this holiday season to bring AEW Worlds End to Chicago, to the Chicagoland area at least, and we'll be coming to the Now Arena. It'll be great. We've had so many great shows out around Hoffman Estates over the years, and for all the fans here around Chicago, I'm very excited to announce December 27th, for the first time ever, AEW Worlds End is coming to Chicago. We're going to have a great event. It's going to be a great way to spend the holiday weekend. Saturday, December 27th, for the first time ever, AEW Worlds End at the Now Arena, where it all began for us. And it's very exciting to go back there and do this show for the first time ever. We've had so many great events here over the years, and I think the first ever AEW Worlds End around Chicago, December 27th, is going to be a huge hit. The tickets are going to go on sale September 8th. September 8th. You're there with me. We're in sync. This is why people like these interviews so much. We're on the same page, September 8th, and I can't wait for that. And I also can't wait for tonight, because tonight is going to be a fantastic episode of Wednesday Night Dynamite. We've got the World Championship on the line tonight. Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley. Everyone banned from ringside. Guaranteed no outside interference tonight on TBS and on HBO Max.
And on HBO Max. Talk to me about this Aragon Ballroom residency. I had the pleasure of being at the Dynamite last Wednesday and the Collision last Saturday. Your thoughts on running wrestling in this building? How does this compare to maybe the residency that you ran at the Hammerstein or the residency in Detroit? How does this venue compare to those?
Well, it's really, for us, this is the longest we've stayed at any venue other than Daly's Place.
That's
to
right.
do, 6 shows in a row in one spot. It's fantastic, and it continues tonight on TBS and tomorrow on TNT. It's going to be a great, great week of wrestling. I absolutely love the Aragon Ballroom. It's everything I thought it could be and more. It's a venue I've wanted to visit for wrestling for a long time. When I was a kid and dreamed of working in wrestling and writing wrestling shows as a hobby, going to the University of Illinois Laboratory High School and then to the University of Illinois for college. I, as a hobby and frankly, spent way too much of my academic time in the back of the classroom writing wrestling shows called Dynamite. And my childhood friend, we would draft up all the wrestlers in the world. My friend Todd, who lives here in Chicago, we would trade tapes, and we would draft up all the wrestlers and pick who we'd each want, split our rosters up, and then I would do Dynamite. He would do his show, the UWF, he would call it, and he would do it at the Aragon Ballroom. He invented the idea in my mind of the residency at the Aragon Ballroom, and it's something I always wanted to do, and here we are. We finally got to do it all these years later, and it's been a huge success. The fans are just fantastic. I know we're going to have another great crowd tonight, and really representing the city of Chicago very well on television. Chicago known for having great wrestling fans, and I think we're showing it off when you can, week in, week out, be this kind of hardcore audience, and the whole country, the whole world of fans with AEW on in 150 countries now. they're seeing that Chicago brings that energy every week. And I think Chicago has really continued to enhance and build on its reputation for being one of the greatest cities for pro wrestling in the entire world.
Let me talk to Tony Khan, the wrestling fan, for a second, because it comes through the passion there so much. You mentioned tape trading last time you were here. You mentioned tape trading a second ago. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you my answer to give you a second to think, and I want to hear your answer. What is the show, the tape, the compilation, whatever it may be, that you couldn't get to your mailbox fast enough to get to after you ordered it, that you were so excited for? Because I remember, and I'm a little bit younger, but getting a PWG DVD in the mail, specifically that 2012 to 2015 range, and specifically there was a show with the Young Bucks, AR Fox, and Samurai Del Sol, people who now find themselves in AEW, at least 3 of them, and not like being able to move fast enough to get to the mailbox, to get the DVD in the house, to get it in the DVD player, to get to that show. And that was such a rewarding experience that, because everything is digital now, we don't really have. But as a tape trader, what do you remember salivating for?
I will give a tape answer and a DVD answer.
I'd love that.
Okay, so for videotape, the answer would be in 1995 when I was 12 years old. My friend Del James, who's actually the tour manager for Guns N' Roses and has helped us put it together to use November Rain for Full Gear last year, and then to use Welcome to the Jungle for AEW Worlds End, which is coming here this year. It's a great plug. And Del not only has been working with Guns N' Roses for decades, Del is a huge wrestling fan, and when I was 12 years old, he had accumulated all this great footage, and I asked him about making the ultimate, and for us at the time, it really was, I think, the best thing anybody had put together, an ultimate Ric Flair compilation, and footage from all these different territories, and it was 1995, it was early internet, dial-up AOL we were on, and we had just gotten stuff that's now, a lot of this is on YouTube. Most of this would be readily available. But, you know, some of those 16 millimeter mid-Atlantic films, that raw footage, all those Flair Steamboat matches from the 70s, the Flair Valentine tag team, and then footage from all the different territories Ric Flair had wrestled in the 80s, like Ric Flair having these great matches in Japan and then going to World Class, wrestling Nick Bockwinkel in Winnipeg,
Of course.
wrestling in Florida, all these different places, and of course so much in Georgia and the Mid-Atlantic, and then through the first Starrcade, watching the first Flair Von Erich cage match, Christmas night, Star Wars 1982, where the Freebirds turned, and all through the 80s into the 90s, and then this great compilation that really covered from the 70s up until what was at the time the present day, which was 1995, 30 years ago. And that was something I watched so many times and watched all those great matches, promos from all these different places, and watched Ric Flair build up a lot of great local wrestlers who didn't reach national or international prominence, but made them feel like in their own territory they were the biggest star imaginable, and that they had a chance on that given day to maybe beat Ric Flair.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really, really loved those matches, and that's something that probably for me as a fan, that was the most excited I was about tapes, and I watched those matches so many times. So that would have been my answer for VHS.
Yes.
For DVDs, when I was in college in 2006, I ordered 2 DVDs from Ring of Honor, which is a promotion I now own. And,
Funny how that works.
and I was going to the University of Illinois, downstate, 2 hours south of here, and I ordered the Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi DVD and the Bryan Danielson versus Kenta DVD.
From Glory by Honor.
Night 2, I think.
Night 2,
Yeah,
yes.
Glory by Honor
Manhattan
5.
Center. Yeah.
And exactly. And
I also own the DVD.
yeah. And there were so many great matches. That was the first time I saw the Briscoes. That was the first time I saw Nigel McGuinness. And there were great matches on these DVDs, but also those were kind of the 2 matches that I really was focused on that I wanted to see. Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi, 2 of my all-time favorites. I had as a kid, talk about some of my favorite tapes, Kenta Kobashi in All Japan, and then later in Noah, it was one of my favorite wrestlers. And Samoa Joe, I had seen a bit of. I was really very excited to watch that match, and it lived up to every expectation. And then, of course, Bryan Danielson versus Kenta. What a great match.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty
really
good.
great.
Yeah.
So those would be my answers on DVD.
It's funny you mentioned the Briscoe brothers there, because the last time you were here, I wanted to talk about Mark Briscoe, and we just ran out of time. Mark Briscoe seems like he is this just this perfect wrestler to have at your disposal, where he seems like he can do anything that is given to him. He loses a lot, but also in losing a lot, he seems to only be more popular with the AEW crowd. Can you describe what your experience has been working with Mark Briscoe from when you took over Ring of Honor to now present day?
Yeah, I love working with Mark Briscoe, and it's been a lot of experiences. I would have to talk about a lot of things, because my first experience with Mark Briscoe was in Ring of Honor. It was when I acquired the promotion in 2022, and the first match I ever worked with him on was FTR versus the Briscoes, Jay and Mark Briscoe versus Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler for the first time in Garland, Texas at Supercard of Honor 2022. And it's one of the best tag team matches ever, and it's the first match in the greatest tag team trilogy, I think, of all time. And to talk about Mark Briscoe and all my experiences with him, I must talk about the Briscoe brothers, because for the first 3 matches I worked with him, they batted the highest average of any people I've ever worked with. They batted 1,000. I've never worked with a better wrestler than Jay Briscoe. And the late, great Jay Briscoe and Mark Briscoe are, I think, the greatest tag team I've ever known, and 2 of the greatest people I've known. And I think if you're going to talk about Mark, you have to talk about Jay, and now obviously talking about Mark as a singles wrestler. But having had the great pleasure to work with Jay, it certainly is incredible how Mark has become such a great singles wrestler and adapted to doing something very different than what he was doing as part of the Briscoes tag team.
For his entire career, where Mark went, Jay went, and they were inseparable for 20 years. And I've always made the point, because I grew up, I had a wonderful mother, still have a wonderful mother, but a mother who would take me to Chicago Ridge to watch Ring of Honor shows at the Frontier Fieldhouse. And I always made the point that for as good as the Briscoes are on TV or on DVD, when you watched Mark Briscoe from 15 feet away, you would go, oh my God, he's the best wrestler there is. And that was a lot of times in a tag team environment. But to see Mark as a singles wrestler flourish the way that he has, given everything that has happened, has been one of the real feel-good stories, I think, in AEW's history.
I agree with that, and I'm really proud that Mark Briscoe has become such a big part of the show. I love working with him, and whether it's been in ROH or AEW, Mark Briscoe, every experience I've had with him has been really positive. And, Mark Briscoe also wins a lot and has won a lot of big matches, has been in big positions, has wrestled on a lot of the major AEW pay-per-views, and he's a great, great star in both companies, and one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. And again, I think Jay and Mark Briscoe would be right there at the top of 2 of the best wrestlers I've ever worked with. So have had a lot of great experiences with Mark Briscoe, and the early experiences were as part of the tag team with the late, great Jay Briscoe, and now Mark Briscoe is an indispensable part of the show week in, week out. You'll be able to see Mark Briscoe tonight on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS. It's 7 o'clock. This is one of the world's great wrestlers, and it's been a real pleasure having all of you great fans joining us in Chicago for these shows, supporting the AEW wrestlers. And when you support the AEW wrestlers, you're supporting the very best, and Mark Briscoe would be at the top of that list.
It's funny seeing AEW use all of these unique-looking venues. Again, the Hammerstein, the beautiful venue you guys ran in Detroit, Aragon Ballroom, obviously Daly's Place, and then you ran TV at Arena Mexico, which we talked about last time you were here. Since running Grand Slam Mexico, have you put any thought into building a venue that is for AEW, by AEW, that is designed to be the optimal wrestling viewing experience in?
Yes. We've had a venue with well, first of all, this has been great running at the Aragon Ballroom. I think the fans here in Chicago absolutely have been wonderful supporting the shows week in, week out. I think there is something to that. I would love to have a venue for AEW where we could do shows regularly and still go on the road and perform, have the great pay-per-view shows in all the top markets as we do. But yeah, absolutely. I think that is something very interesting and a fascinating possibility to have a TV venue that would be custom built for us or something that fits our needs like a glove. Aragon Ballroom's been great. Daly's Place was a great venue for AEW for over a year straight. So there's great possibilities for that, but there's also great energy, like you said, by being able to go to different places and take the show to multiple unique venues and multiple great markets. And when you talk about some of those great cities, I mean, you just mentioned New York City, Detroit, obviously here in Chicago, and also Mexico City. Those are some of the top cities for sports, and in particular, really some of the top cities for pro wrestling in the world. So I definitely agree with some of those venues you mentioned and a lot of other ones across the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast and everywhere in between. We've had some really great shows this past year, and I think by taking the show on the road also we get to see more of our fans, hopefully make some new fans along the way. But it's a great question. I think there is something to that.
One of the things that I was treated to last week at the Aragon, on both Dynamite and Collision, this seems to be a recurring theme on television lately, and it's one that I'm a big fan of, is these all-star 8-man tag matches that I think AEW was built on. A lot of great, say, Young Bucks trios matches. And then I felt like maybe they went away for a little bit, and now they're back in rare form, a lot of these 8-man tags. Can you explain to me perhaps the inspiration as to how these tag matches found their way back on TV?
It's a great question. I think, I really do like doing the all-star matches and having a lot of the top stars featured on television. And in this case, I just really thought it's a fun way to switch it up. We have a lot of great singles matches on the shows. Obviously, just look at the big championship singles matches coming up this week. Tonight, you have Jon Moxley, the former world champion, taking on the current world champion, Hangman Page, for the AEW World Championship live tonight, 7 p.m. on TBS and HBO Max. Guaranteed no outside interference. What a huge match tonight. You've got Kyle Fletcher versus Dustin Rhodes for the TNT Championship, one-on-one in a Chicago street fight. There's great one-on-one matches every week in AEW, every show. But there's also, I think, a great opportunity to present these chaotic fights and have teams battling it out to take the winner's purse. Sometimes these even in big inflated winner's purses I'll put out there and have a big winner-take-all match for some big stakes, money. But every match in AEW, there's a lot of money on the line, a lot of prestige, and it's been a great way to showcase top stars on the shows, and it's a great juxtaposition from the action you see in these hard-hitting one-on-one fights.
These feel very Michinoku Pro inspired, which is something that I always welcome on American TV.
Well, I was born on 10/10, my friend.
Is that right?
I was born on October 10th, so there's probably a reason for that.
Fantastic. Obviously tonight, AEW, Hangman Page, Jon Moxley World Championship match. I was thinking about that match, and it's funny, you actually referenced a question I was going to ask earlier in this interview. When I go back and I watch the World Class TV from the end of '82, and it's Kevin versus Flair for the title. It's the angle that kicks off the Freebirds.
That's Kerry versus Flair.
I'm sorry, yes.
Kevin, yeah, that'd be Kevin is the...
I apologize. Nevertheless, it is such a great episode of episodic wrestling TV where this hour is all built up to this cage match. They go slow in the beginning. They build to this match. I'm curious from your perspective. We'll talk to Tony Khan, the fan, once again. We'll talk about wrestling pre-2019, before AEW existed. To you, what is the perfect episode of wrestling television? Is there one that you go back to and you go, man, if I have AEW feeling like this, I am doing my job well?
Well, that's a great question. There are a number of shows like that, I think, across a number of promotions that, that's a great example. that Kerry Von Erich versus Ric Flair Christmas night 1982 steel cage match, that would be up there for sure. That's one of the strongest ones. I think I love that episode. That's the Ric Flair versus Barry Windham worldwide match. But again, these are matches that comprise most of a show, and you can have great episodes like that, absolutely. And I think for me, there's a number of shows like that I grew up on across a number of different promotions. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, because I also like sometimes there's great shows that you see the culmination of several stories. Then there's other shows that people remember for one great angle, but then the action from the top to the bottom on those shows isn't always as consistent. It might just be one high point moment you remember. For example, when they put the Russian flag on Bill Watts in the UWF, it wasn't like everything on that episode is so memorable and it's all top matches, top to bottom.
Yeah.
I went back and looked, and I'm a huge fan, as everyone knows, of Sting
Yes.
from that era. But it's kind of crazy to look back, around the UWF TV from 86 to 87, they ran the Fantastics versus Sting and Eddie Gilbert on TV 17 times.
Really?
In about 6 months. Every week was the same match. And they didn't all stand out. Like, some of them were pretty good, but the match was a backdrop to do the different stories. Like the Missy Hyatt story with Eddie Gilbert would move along a little bit each week, and the John Tatum, Eddie Gilbert stuff was happening in the background. It was an interesting time for that promotion. There were some really great things that happened on the show, but it wasn't like the most consistent period of wrestling TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting to say. The episode you said I thought was a really good example of that. That's a very good one. So there's a lot of good examples. I definitely don't want to bring up an example from AEW TV, because I'd rather look at other people's great shows and the things people have done top to bottom with wrestling TV. But I think for me, some of the best ones would be in the 1980s. I think my personal favorite, though, is probably the Ted DiBiase versus Ric Flair episode of Mid-South Wrestling that is effectively the Ted DiBiase turn. And he'd been really the biggest villain in Mid-South Wrestling for many years. And Ric Flair was the NWA World Champion coming into town. And for anybody who's not familiar with it, it's a great match. And the story that leads up to it, involving Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase, and Dick Murdoch, it's excellent. It's not for the faint at heart. The commissioner and president of the company, Bill Watts, does a great promo in between, warning fans that after what happened early in the show, the altercation that took place early in the show, Ted DiBiase was bloodied and battered, and there's a good explanation for why he wants to continue on and have the match, because he's afraid Ric Flair is going to use it as an excuse to weasel out of the match and leave the Mid-South, go to the next town and not come back for a long time, and who knows where things will be. So he wanted the match then and there. And what unfolds, Bill Watts gives a pretty good warning. This is not for the faint at heart. We've applied a pressure bandage. This is going to get potentially pretty bloody. Viewer discretion is advised. And it's a good warning, because that's what happens. It gets pretty bloody. And they did a great job with it, where at the beginning of the episode you would have said Ted DiBiase was the most hated man in this company and had been for a long time. And by the end of the episode, the fans in the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Louisiana were chanting Teddy, 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 Teddy. So I thought that was a very effective hour of wrestling television also.
Let's end on this, because I've been curious about this, and I just haven't had the chance to ask you yet. I think one of the great charms of AEW, especially when you guys are firing on all cylinders like you are right now, like we saw with Hangman and Mox at All In, is there's a level of violence that I think has been brought back to American wrestling that had largely been missing for a very long time. But how does that work with your television partners and your pay-per-view partners? If you have, say, something like Hangman and Mox, do you have to give them a heads up ahead of time of like, hey, Mox is going to lay on a bed of nails here? Or how does that work? Is there ever any pushback from the networks?
No. Everybody's been really supportive. I think, as long as we keep having great shows and delivering great shows for the fans, I think everybody's really happy. So, no, I've never had any questions about that, especially on pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. There's never any kind of restriction for anything like that. And on TV, I think the network has always been really supportive about having hard-hitting action and these really brutal fights. It's a big part of what AEW is great matches and wrestlers beating the hell out of each other. So that's a big part of AEW, and TBS and TNT have always supported it, and certainly on pay-per-view, that's what we're going to deliver.
Absolutely. Well, AEW Worlds End is coming to the Now Arena. That's going to be Saturday, December 27th. I will be there. Tony Khan will be there. Tickets are on sale at AEW Tix on September 8th.
AEW TIX.
TIX, AEWTix.com. That is, again, September 8th when tickets go on sale. Tony, before we go, is there anything else on your mind? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, it's great to see you, Case. Thanks for doing these interviews.
My pleasure.
So great, and I really appreciate you having me on to talk about wrestling and AEW here.